We don't need any more technology to transform companies. It literally can do anything a human can do today. And I'm not just talking about AI itself. I'm talking about the full landscape of technology, everything around data, workflow engines, AI systems, automation systems, orchestration. So the first thing is we don't need anything else. We can transform entire companies.
Welcome to the Implement AI podcast, the podcast where we explore the impact of AI on your business. I'm Piers Linney, and alongside my co-host and co-founder of Implement AI, Dr. Aalok Shukla, we cover the real-world applications and impact of how AI can be practically applied to drive growth and efficiency in your organization. We cut through the jargon to focus on actionable strategies and use cases to highlight the transformational power of AI. Let's dive into today's conversation. I'm Piers.
Hi, I'm Aalok.
So we're not been traveling as much this week, although I've spent about literally the last 3 weeks, I think, in London. Various
You've been a lot of events.
Yeah, I must have done like 6 different events from we had Richard Harpin's book launch, the British Industry Awards, which is the inaugural event there, had the Anthropy Summer Reception, which is great. Met some of our customers there actually. Hopefully we've met some new ones as well. So it's been a very busy sort of few weeks and meeting customers as well. And we're also in the middle of a financing round, a seed round. So we did our pre-seed last year, and we did quite well on the old cash flow. So we've now just launched our seed round now. So we've got some quite interesting investors are coming in.
Yeah, very connected. Very nice.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? And then we'll just mention it now, it's a bit early days, but we are planning one of our AIOS events, a bit like the one we did in London, but in Manchester. And it's probably going to be in the northwest, so probably September. We need to get that planned out after summer when everyone's back. But that should be another sort of iteration of the event. But again, it'll be a step ahead again because we've actually launched the platform now.
Exactly. So like you say, one of the best things is like hearing from, enterprising, business leaders and business owners and, meeting them in person, going through their workflows and their use cases live, and looking forward to doing it in Manchester. Definitely.
So in this show, we thought it was time. It's a very interesting reflection point now because, I mean, we live in the AI bubble, right? So you may not have read all about it and seen all the various tests, but xAI, this is Elon Musk's company. No matter what you think of Elon Musk, he's got a very powerful AI, and they've launched Grok 4. So this is Grok. There's another Grok, there's something else. It's a Grok 4, and it's a very, very powerful model. And what we're seeing now is the understood exponential curve, as we're going to talk about. These different points, you're seeing, this momentum continues, and also we're expecting, which is why it's a good point to talk about this. In August, the news is potentially we're going to see ChatGPT 5. Now that can't be incremental, right? ChatGPT 4.5 was kind of incremental. There was a bit of not much happened there. So 5 needs to be something interesting, especially as you're seeing, things like Grok 4 coming out. And you've seen the CEO of Google on Twitter, congratulating Elon Musk. So we thought it was a good time to kind of almost, stop and look back and say, where are we? What is this stated AI in 2025? And we're also inviting a guest on the show, so Danilo McGarry. I've known Danilo for quite a few years. He's ranked as one of these top AI commentators in the world. He's got a very fast-growing new podcast called It's All About AI Podcast. That's his podcast on YouTube. So go and have a look at that as well. We invited Danilo on sort of mid through the show to come and give us his view because he was at the NVIDIA conference. They met Jensen Huang there. He's in the midst there, very well connected. So we thought we'd be a good guy to get on at this point in time to talk about where we are. So before we do that then, let's jump into it. So you've got this kind of frontier model. I know there's a shake-up, but again, these pull into an exponential curve, haven't you? So what's your view? Because I know you've been playing with Grok.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take a step back, right? So I was listening yesterday to one of Lex Friedman's podcasts from 5 years ago. There was a particular person I wanted to hear what they had to say, and I was listening to that. At that time, it was called the Artificial Intelligence Podcast, right? And it was then talking about like the hope is to inspire more progress in AI. I mean, look at where we are now, right? Like you look at at that point, they were worried that the things that kind of got stuck, and you look at where we are now. Now, what's happened is we sort of skipped past the Turing test. So if we think about like where we are on a curve, let's think about where we thought about things before this whole revolution kicked off, right? So the point was then that the imitation game, that the famous, the Turing test from Alan Turing, if a human was having a conversation with, an unknown actor, an AI, could it know it was talking to an AI or talking to a human, basically, right? We've actually skipped past that, and nobody actually really acknowledged it too much. Like as a society, we skip past it. We see it every day. We had an AI agent doing recruitment calls on Thursday evening to 1,756 calls, like to reactivate candidates, and booked 40 appointments for people that want to go. Like we've skipped past the Turing test. So that part of it has kind of gone. Now Grok 4, he was saying at his presentation, it is better than PhD level across everything. Now just take a step back for a second, right? Like if engineering, biology, medicine, physics, chemistry, whatever dimension you want to go into beyond PhD level and everything. And to look at some kind of like examples against humans. So this is where it's very interesting. Look at some examples against humans. Like if a human does this test, there's one exam they call humanity's last exam. They're actually having to invent harder and harder tests to test these frontier models, basically, right? And in this humanity's last exam, it's like got very difficult questions across every domain of knowledge, basically. And the most super genius human on the planet would get 5 or 10%.
It's all the humanity's last exam. If humanity 5%.
The most super genius people get 5-10%. I can't even repeat the questions because they don't even understand them. It's like if you take a 5-dimensional gravitational object and reduce it to 2 dimensions, and then you have the sin and the tan of like, I can't tell you what it is, but like that's like those sorts of things maxed.
I'll explain it later. Don't worry.
Yeah. So it's nothing. Yeah, you can explain that bit. So then from that, the most super genius human would get 5 to 10%. Okay. Frontier models would get 15 to 20%, right? Grok 4, out of the gate, from 24 months from starting it, is at 45% now, basically, right? And he's saying that he expects it to discover new physics or new mathematics in the future, like within the next 12 months, essentially. This is insane.
But just on that though, just on the Turing test. So the Turing test, the original version of it, where you was talking to it, basically in a chat, wasn't it?
Imitation game, exactly.
Yeah, they keep the imitation game. They keep moving the goalposts. That's what's happened.
That's my point.
Yeah, it's like, well, so we're way past the Turing test, aren't we? But I think the next one will be the robotics Turing test, which we'll cover in a different podcast probably.
Yeah, but if you go back one bit, like I think 2 years ago, when we held our first event, we were kind of showing it a graph where it was basically saying that like AI has this IQ now, and then at some point it'll be smarter than humans, and then it'll be smarter than all humans. We've already passed that, basically, right? I know you've got like different, Jan LeCun will describe in different ways that, okay, it doesn't have the intelligence of a cat because it's looking at spatial and global information coming from the eyes and stuff like that, but that's very different. If you're looking at like any exam, this AI will beat any human and get perfect scores on it. So the point I'm trying to make here is that it's already beyond human intelligence and PhD level across everything. So it is now smarter than not just average humans, even educated humans across every single domain, basically.
But they're all now racing towards someone racing ASI.
The definition's changing.
AGI, isn't it now?
Yes. So AGI used to be this. AGI used to be smarter than every human on everything, basically. They've changed that now to like, can it make more money than people? Like one of the tests is a vending machine test, which is very interesting, where basically they give the operation of a vending machine and can it make money? And again, Grok 4 is the AI that can run the vending machine most profitably compared to like Claude's one. Claude, when they did a new test, it was almost giving discounts and selling at a loss, basically, right? Like so
Claude was giving away tungsten blocks.
Yeah, exactly. The humans gamed it, basically. So the point we're making is like it's already beyond human capability and everything. And like there's another dimension that we've just entered into a new slipstream, right? So I'll just explain this. So you probably heard about Scale AI got acquired or acqui-hired by Meta, where basically they paid like 15 billion to like hire the team from it, and they were doing the data labeling for all the frontier models. Now, why is that important? Because if you know how the data is labeled for Google or for X or for anyone else like this, you got insights on like what approaches they're using in their kind of training. But we've actually moved into a different thing. Elon didn't use that approach basically to train Grok, basically, right? He built Colossus, which is like an enormous, GPU factory essentially, and he spun it up so quickly. And what his system is doing is basically, I think, has now entered the next dimension of AI, and I'll explain this, right? Basically, his system has lent on compute, not data necessarily. And what that's doing is like, imagine you want to teach an AI to play chess. There's 2 ways you can do it. One way is like, here's the board, these are the rules, play every single possibility known to man and go for it, basically, right? That's one thing, right? The other way is like, here's the board. Now, this is the Caracan opening. This is the French defense. This is this basically human trained data, basically, right? You give it all those rules and stuff like that. And then you would expect that that's a more elegant and better way of teaching it. Actually, no. The first way of making it do every single possible combination and just calculate all the different bits yields superior results because it can spot patterns humans couldn't. Like, this could do a sacrifice on one move and win 35 moves later. No human would ever know that, basically, right? So what I'm trying to say is that we've already now branched away from our ability to understand how it's improving.
Right, and eventually, because people like Ilya Sutskever, they're trying to go ASI. We're not going to understand what it's doing or how it's doing it at all.
We've already now just passed that milestone. And I think people don't quite understand the importance of that, basically, where the AI is training the AI because they're using the AI to actually create the data for the new AI in ways that we cannot even understand, but it yields, higher resolution and higher in inference.
Okay, so that's the kind of the technological frontier we talk about quite a lot. So the thing people struggle with is reading about Grok 4 and all these benchmarks, but then what does that actually mean in terms of the state of AI to implement in your business if you're a business leader? So let's talk about the agents. So the things that we started doing 18 months ago, 2 years ago, are now called AI agents. We tend to call them digital workers. So what that's meant for AI agents often is that there's a lot of technology. Everyone's launched it. You've got Agent Force. Google have got their thing. You're seeing Marketplace and AWS. You're seeing on Azure. You've got the no-code platforms, the N8N, where you can create these things. You've got every Tom, Dick, and Harry launching vertical AIs. You've got AIs that are industry specific, let's say in law or wealth management, for example. Just share your view on what today is the AI agent.
So now we have to think about it as like an intelligent entity, which we've always said, right? And it has a kind of like a goal, a persona. It's also got like access to some tools and it can do different things. Basically, it's now its own being, let's call it that, which can be, right? Like, which then can be configured. But I have to say that the stuff that you talked about is a massive spectrum ranging from just a bit of automation and, if then that's stuff to, like more agentic stuff. And everything's been kind of agent washed, if you want to call it that, basically, right? Like, so I kind of like look in that way. But the key thing to understand is like, the breakthrough of generative AI was that its ability to like reason and understand and plan. And all of that is now increasing massively. So for example, like research for, financial analysis or different things like this from companies, these AIs like, deep research or, the Grok research and different stuff like this, they can do like much more detailed analysis than can be done before. Like I saw for Grok 4, someone had put together like, assuming the cost of manufacturing is this and the uptake for Optimus, the humanoid robot is this, what the cost curve would be by 2035 for an Optimus thing. And it was calculating everything in detail. And what I'm going to say is that that's like the cost of that is like fractions of of what it would cost for a human. I mean, like by more than 1,000x probably, right? Like cheaper for the AI to do it than the human to do it. And what does this level of intelligence and expertise? Because basically, when you'd ask a senior colleague, can you help me with this? Basically, right? Now you have access to that senior colleague, kind of, as long as you can, safely bring your own company's data and the know-how and that kind of elements within there. And that's what we do with AIOS to help people do that stuff like this. But the point is, like, you've now got like beyond PhD capabilities within any agent that you want to deploy, provided it is a true agent.
But they can't do we know they can't do everything perfectly, can they? So you've got to pick your battles and use case.
Scoping is very important. What it will do, what it will not do, but that's just the same as workflow. Like you don't have employees that will do everything, isn't it? Right? You're not going to get Brenda in accounts to also do sales calls and stuff like that, right? Like everybody's like specialized in their kind of roles. The same thing needs to be with agents because there's what we call context engineering. It's making sure that the agent has all the context around the process, the customer, whatever needs to happen, the decisions, the edge cases, all of that stuff. Like life is edge cases, basically, right? Each edge case might happen once, but the probability an edge case will happen is 100%, basically, right? So you have to then understand what the 20 or 30 different parameters of condition that can happen and have solutions for that. So absolutely what you're saying, Piers. The edge case design is important, but then having a human in the loop where the humans deal with the ones that the agents can't do. But I read something very interesting where they said the human in the loop, basically the human has to deal with the hardest ones the AIs can't do, right? And as the AIs get smarter, the ones that the humans have to do gets even harder, basically, isn't it? Like they're great at the edge cases, right? So that's how that kind of works. But this is like a very different type of team now we're kind of evolving into.
Fair to say, isn't it, that it doesn't matter what organization you have, no matter what sector you're in, no matter who we talk to. I mean, we always say we don't really get involved in like heavy industrial things, but even there's always a use case, isn't there, for an AI agent?
Customers for the analysis of the machines, you can actually do those things, right? It's just not for the actual, widget on the production line, basically, right? But like, like I have an agent I was reviewing yesterday, which is configured for us in AIOS, which is like reviewing my email inbox, spotting all the different emails. Then it's like organizing, like, who potentially has an inquiry that didn't be followed up and different information about them. Now, imagine across your organization, you got 50 people and you want to spot all the missed opportunities and potentially see like which customers could be cross-sold and different stuff. You can now apply this across scale, right? Before you'd kind of like, now you can give each person like their own team member essentially to assist them in those things. Like the power is incredible.
But what you've seen though is because of had to make these things work is, so you talked about the technology, you've got the frontier models, and then you've talked about we talked about the interoperability. So you've got MCP and the agent to agents. Then you've got the tools, and then you've got ability to access our world through various integrations. So you're seeing now that all the pieces of the puzzle are kind of there. The only question now is for any organization, isn't it, is to go and look at and we'll talk about AI first in a minute, go and look at your workflows, your processes, your people, your customers, your support, your customer success department, your analytics, and work out where can this technology, as it is today, which is extremely powerful, where can we deploy it? And there's hardly any excuse to. And then while you're doing that, and it's going to be hard to do, is start thinking about what do we look like AI first? Because your competition today is not it's not the competition you have today. It's not the incumbents. It's some people that are going to set up what you do AI first.
Exactly. I was doing this yesterday, right? Like, so I was analyzing, like for example, recruitment market, right? Like, because obviously, like, I was just trying to understand, like, what's the typical profit margin of like net profit? What's the kind of like cost structure? What's the kind of typical roles, different stuff like this? And I was looking at it, and I went through all the different details and different roles, and I was looking at like, you have a markup on like, let's say it's a 3-month contract for an employee that they're placing at a different place, and then they'll put like a 25% margin on the hourly rate of whatever it is, and what the average contract value is going to be based on different skills over 3 months. And I was working those things out. Then I was looking at, okay, so what's the end profit margin? You're looking at 10 to 15%, basically. Then I said, okay, let's go AI first. And I started defining, okay, if this is doing this role, this is doing this one, or this is managing this, and the screen is happening like this, we could potentially eliminate, redistribute, this percentage of these different things. And it was coming to like virtually double the profit margin, so like, so if you have that approach, but it's not just the profit margin, it's the speed. Like you can reply to people faster, you can get the details faster, you can place people faster, you could maybe even do, like, you could pay the contractors more for working with you versus other people. And and you can like basically then make sure you get more supply coming to you and you create that flywheel. So
And you're gathering more valuable data.
yeah, and then you roll that up into like 20 or 50 or units of like of that business, and you got a very, very, valuable business basically, right? Like as a roll up. So this whole thing is like, and also like what's quite funny actually is now we're kind of coming to like different businesses we're getting introduced to. Sometimes it's the investors and the owners of the business that are introducing us to the business, and we're just coming up with, we've got a framework which we kind of go through of like these are your opportunities. So now it's not even, sometimes I say to people, you don't even need to think of what your opportunities are. We'll go through them with you basically, right? Like, and it's just like, so we just go through a checklist, like, do you have this? What's your database like this? What's your active things like this? What's the cross-sell potential of this? What's that? Like, and we just, from that, we're like, okay, these are your opportunities, right? Which one do you want to start with? And then so very quickly, that's like, okay, great, because these are the things they couldn't do before. This is not that people were doing it. It's just things that are not being done, but they're meaningful drivers basically, right?
But it's also the way we tend to approach it is the AIOS is that you're setting up these digital workers, as we call them, to work in your business with your data, with your customers, the way you want them to. The issue often is with a lot of this sort of the platforms about like co-pilots, whatever, is that everyone's got to have it. So it's interesting, wasn't it? We had Alan on last week talk about wealth management. And you've got these platforms now in wealth management that everybody's deploying. So then there's no more competitive advantage.
But there is, but it's in a different space. So I had a meeting with a wealth manager, like, and he's already using a vertical AI and stuff like that, but he still has an issue where there's 5 different systems that he needs to put data, transpose data between. And then he also has to chase people to like try and get the information from them and stuff like that. So all those are, I'll call beyond the browser, basically, right? Like imagine you got a SaaS, which can operate nice and neatly within a browser, and maybe it takes some meeting notes, but it can't do more than that, right? It's not going beyond the browser, right? It's like, so it's not reaching out to people, contacting, getting different details and stuff like that from within there. So in this sort of situation, like he was asking, like, where can we work with compute use? And I said to him very transparently, for what you're trying to do right now, the tech isn't there yet. And to be perfectly honest, if you can actually system migrate into like 3 systems rather than 5, that's good for you to do. However, probably in 6 months, 9 months, we could talk again, basically, right? But in other situations, right, like there are so many opportunities of things that you can actually go AI first on now. And I think it's just really important to like start now, because the thing people don't understand is like, it's the edge cases and the training. So for example, all those things of training the system, like do this but not this, or if it has this, then do this. You have to specify those things, and that comes from working, implementing. Then when you've got the system in place and Grok 4 comes up, Grok 5, GPT-5, then the agent becomes more powerful. But if you haven't got any of those edge cases configured, you don't have any of the workflows configured, the best AI in the model in the world is useless to you because it's not operationally embedded in your business.
Yeah, but also just by doing anything, you're learning about how to understand the technology, deploy it, take your business with, take all your stakeholders with you. So that's the issue with this. Actually, well, a lot of the work that we do is not just technology, is it? It's the actual organizational understanding and approach to adopting this technology.
You're changing this, if you're fundamentally changing the capacity and the cycle time of whatever function you're looking at, basically, right? So if you look at like that example, a typical recruit will call, I don't know, 80 to 150 people a day. This one called 1756 within, 4 hours. Because the way our system works is, only like about 400 and something people answered the phone. So you don't actually get charged for those 1,356 calls. A human does charge you because they have to call those numbers.
Well, isn't it? That one of the blocker issues we come across often is you set the AI agents off, and then the organization itself cannot deal with the leads or the throughput that comes back, the output. And so it's just crazy, isn't it? That they can't. Then how do you scale that up?
There was people that was on that call saying, I'm ready for work from this week or next week. And I was like, we sent the report with everything, but like, I don't know how many of those will get followed up. But what I'm trying to say is that like the opportunities are there and you've got that ability to do it. But the thing is like, if you haven't like you cannot implement digital workers in your business in the same way as downloading a browser. It is not the same. You understand, right? It's also your know-how, the way your business do things, how you handle it, the customer history, what they've bought from you before, whether you'll deal it. Because the answer to everything in life is it depends, right? Depends on you, depends on the situation, depends on whatever like this. And an experienced person knows those things, and that's what training and culture is for. But how can you onboard your agents? Like this is what we're talking about, basically, isn't it?
So you see a lot of the research we look at where McKinsey is saying, 75% of organizations have adopted generative AI, right? I'm not sure what they're measuring. They're probably very large companies. I'm not sure how they define using AI. It could be using Copilot or some Microsoft Copilot. So there's no way is the number anywhere near 75% of businesses have implemented generative AI or AI in any form in some useful way that generates ROI. Not even close. I'd be surprised if it's 25%. Maybe a large enterprise is.
They're just talking about like just using ChatGPT now and again.
If you read those stats, don't believe it. You can get ahead of the game massively by going now. So that's kind of, so you've got all those kind of components to generative AI and deploying it in business. Or you even got robotics. So the ChatGPT moment in robotics, that's coming.
That's coming. Like, I was contacted by a company that sells cleaning robots, and I was looking at it, and I was like, this is actually very impressive. And yesterday I was listening to, for example, All In podcast, and then Travis, who founded Uber, he's got his Cloud Kitchens business, and he's has been working on a machine which basically assembles salad bowls, essentially, right? Like imagine like a tofu bowl or chicken bowl or whatever it is like that. And he basically said that like you could take out more like 80% of the labor cost by doing it this way, and then by doing a further automation where it's like, the ingredients go in a particular way and different things, and even delivery is automated, stuff like that. A lot of the costs can be stripped out, basically. So he sees a future where basically anyone can get any kind of meal the way they want it delivered to them in a kind of affordable way, which would then be kind of a replacement for your Pretz or whatever like that. People still go out to eat, but the point he's trying to make is that taking that labor cost out of the system. Robots, the biggest robot in the world is autonomous cars, basically, right? You look at like Tesla, where like, they launched their Robotaxi in Austin. I believe that like it's a flat fee, $4 per trip, and they're charging 25p a mile versus like Uber is like £2.50 or £3 or £4 or whatever it is. It's like,
I mean, he's driving around Tesla influencers. That's it.
point is that because there's no human labor cost, you can you're just down to electricity cost basically, right? And essentially, amortization of the CapEx spends that you bought the car for. So that is incredible. And then now you look at like humanoid robots as well, like the cost of those are coming down, the capabilities of those are going up, like the dexterity to like.
People say to me, they go, "Oh, yeah, but humanoid robots they're still going to be 20 grand." I'm like, well, hang on a minute. Finance it.
Cars have doubled in price, and financing, for example, they'll be available, like from, I don't know, 100 quid a month or 150 quid a month, isn't that like in that kind of way? So I think that like people are not ready, right? I think like there was another example, like, CEO of Anthropic is saying that 75% of like, knowledge work jobs are going to disappear. It's like, imagine the CEO of the best bricklaying machine company in the world is saying 75% of bricklayers are not going to be needed because of our machine. Pay attention. And people are just not paying attention right now. And the robotics is coming. And then all of those opportunities for, like work, but then also cybersecurity, that's another thing because the attack surface increases and all that kind of stuff. We're entering a fundamentally different world. And this episode is a good time because we are at an inflection point. And I think before it was like, okay, is this a thing? It is. No one can now say this is not a thing. And this is not the biggest fundamental shift ever.
What we see often though is it's very hard for people to understand the potential impact because you've got no historic frame of reference. When we saw cloud, you can see what a server did, sort of thing, but there's no frame of reference. For example, in the recruitment example you just gave, for somebody making 1,700 phone calls in 7 hours and doing perfect follow-up.
The closest would have been offshoring. The closest would have been like, like for example, your US labor cost is, I don't know, $25, $30 an hour. You outsource to the Philippines, and then you've got your labor cost down to whatever, $2, $3 an hour.
But the labor's still doing the same thing.
But it was kind of abstracted because there's like hundreds of people doing the thing or whatever like that. But I agree with you, right? Like in terms of like that kind of that kind of like value inflection, let's call it, for like the company was there to a degree. But as you have lots of people, the quality and then the consistency and all that stuff happens essentially, right?
So we've got to, the point I'm making is you've got to see it to believe it. And then once you see it, the lies got going on about how to do it. And the last thing really is about the state of AI is the regulators are catching up. So, the EU Act, especially if you're operating in the EU or selling into the EU, is now operative. So you've got to start thinking about not so much all the risk elements side, it's quite complicated, but you've got to be trained. So if you're not training yourself, your team, your employees, your workforce to understand the basis of this technology, then you're leaving yourself out for some kind of liability.
They'll go somewhere else where the job is going to be better. Because imagine, for example, like you look at like the ultimate poaching that happened. Like Meta offered $100 million basically to all the leading researchers at Apple, at like OpenAI, and then they all switched across, isn't it? Right. So imagine the equivalent where like a company that's AI first in your area says, "Hey, do you want to come and do the same job but with us? But we don't do the boring stuff, and you'll earn more money because you'll get bonuses based on your productivity."
You're not doing the mundane and you're more productive. So that's where AI is. Let's just move on a bit. So if you don't know much about Implement AI, go to our website, implementai.io. We've got the podcast, we've got white papers, we've got lots of resources in our resource center there. So download them and have a read. Please do review this podcast, especially at Apple as well. So we've got a huge amount of resource that we try and write over time. And we're also now looking at developing to the playbooks for different sectors as well. So we'll see those published as well. And then we're going to introduce Danilo and have a chat with him. Well, hi, Danilo. Thanks for joining us. Let me do a quick introduction there. So I met Danilo quite a few years ago. I was one of the early people on his very, very rapidly growing podcast. Danilo is one of the top 20 people in the world with sort of know-how and expertise of AI. And he's got a great podcast all about AI. It's growing very, very quickly. On his way to 500,000, I reckon, Danilo. So thanks for joining us. We've been talking about, and you'll have a view on this, about the state of AI. Where are we? Where's the technology? What should you be focusing on? How do you cut through the noise? And what should business leaders be thinking? It's a big question, but let's kind of start there, maybe with sort of more about your high-level view.
Yeah, sure. So one thing I've been saying actually for at least 12 months now is we don't need any more technology to transform companies. And that kind of squashes the people who kind of keep saying, "Oh no, we'll wait another 6 months to see if this gets any better." It's like, hello, you don't need this to be any better. It literally can do anything a human can do today. And I'm not just talking about AI itself. I'm talking about the full landscape of technology, everything around data, workflow engines, AI systems, automation systems, and the orchestration of all of that. So it's, the first thing is we don't need anything else. We can transform entire companies. The second thing is, it's getting better and better every 6 months. So GPT-5 is coming out very, very, very soon. Grok 4 just came out as well. And what's happening is the IQ is starting to go up, and also the EQ side of AI is starting to go up as well. And this brought up a conversation that I had in Paris with Jensen Huang and the NVIDIA team and a lot of other people like the CEO of Mistral AI, where we're starting to split up and finally start to define AGI and ASI. So AGI, think of it as this, textbook smart, can pass any exam, is textbook smarter than any human. And this is definitely going to be available within the next 2 years. So by 2027, maximum 2028. And then ASI is more of a, existential type of discussion. What is true intelligence? Can it invent things that have never been invented before? It's more theological than anything else. Does it have consciousness? All this kind of stuff. And that might not ever happen, or it might happen in 20 years. Who knows? And to be honest, who cares? People should not be hung up on this discussion of ASI. AGI is just, absolutely amazing, better than any group of humans. So the reason I'm bringing this up is, very quickly, the reason I'm bringing this up is, at the moment, regulators are protecting the job market because they're putting in place this maker-checker process. So human in the loop, right? We all heard this term, human in the loop, where you must have a human at the end of this process. It could have been done all by AI and automation, but you must have a human to approve it at the end. Now, when a system gets to 300 IQ, which will happen by the end of this year, at least 250 IQ, it doesn't make sense anymore for a human to be checking that work. It's a bit like me giving my son, a 9-year-old, checking my work. He has no clue what I'm doing or how I'm doing it. And, so human in the loop is going to start not making sense as quickly as next year already. So there's a lot of things happening, right? If a company doesn't use it to transform very quickly, they're going to be in a point where they'll be competing with companies who have this installed left, right, and center. Human in the loop is no longer really needed. Then how do you compete? And it's too late. We have already the Intel CEO saying that it's already too late to install AI and use it in their company. So, mega companies are already starting to show signs of this.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, Aalok, that we see that, so I've worked with government as well, and the government kind of gets it. Big companies get it because they've got the research. They know that if they move their margins by 1 point, it makes a massive difference in the bottom line. We work a lot with sort of small, medium-sized, kind of mid-market businesses, and they don't always kind of appreciate the changes coming. And that's really what this conversation is about. It's kind of on the exponential curve. When you're in the foothills of it, you don't really feel how much is happening. There's much change going on, but it is happening. So where do you think businesses, we see you've got the noise, the kind of PR frontier. Then you've got that kind of technological frontier, then the operational frontier. And you've got a business as well that, develops software and then sort of for an AI as well, implements AI. Where do you think organizations should be starting? Because a lot of them just don't know where to start.
I mean, yeah, I've got a couple of businesses, they all use AI fully. I mean, we're using everything we can. The difficult part is, if you don't know what you don't know. So the tough thing is, how does a company CEO of a mid-company market cap, makes 100 million or below, how does he or she know that this is so important if they don't know anything about it? So the first thing I tell companies is, just look at the research and look at the existential risk of competitors using it. And when that happens, you're screwed. So the best thing is start education at the top. You must add somebody that has knowledge of AI in your board. If you don't have a board, hire an executive, which is going to look at efficiency, because the worst case scenario is that person is going to find better ways of the company operating. If you use AI, if you use automation, if you use anything else, something is going to improve, right? So you just got to have a pillar in the company of somebody who understands innovative tech really well, and then let them get to work in educating the workforce, especially the C-level executives, shareholders, owners, etc. That's why I've partnered with the FT on educating boards on how to use AI, because if they don't know how to use it themselves, how the hell can they govern it? So this is a big problem. And there's been a Deloitte paper that came out a couple of months ago where 79% of boards in the UK, US, and other countries, they don't feel like they are adequately equipped to govern AI. So almost 80% of companies they know there's something wrong. They know they need to learn something, but they're not even doing anything about it, which is absolutely nuts. So the first thing is start at the top, education at the top, add somebody to your team. And to be honest, until that's done, there's almost no point talking about anything else. Education comes first. That's why, when I go and do a speech, or when the software company does a training session, nothing really happens until that education piece starts. And it's quite funny because after you do a speech or you do a training session, a workshop to show them the art of the possible, then they start going bananas in it. All of a sudden they have resources, and all of a sudden they start spending on it and implementing it everywhere they can. So I would say the real inertia starts with education.
Yeah, I think just on that, I think that what we see, isn't it, Aalok, is that there's no historical reference for this technology. Like, I sold cloud for years, right? The cloud, it's like a server, and you can see a server on premise and what it does, but there's no historical reference point for what AI does. Aalok can talk about, we had one the other day where we did basically an outbound call campaign. It's doing 2,000 calls in an hour. It's collecting all the data, and it's completing all the CRM properly, which humans don't tend to do. So until you see it, you can't believe it, can you?
And I think the key thing here is that, like, I had an email over the weekend from someone that we've been talking to, and it's quite interesting the way he said, he goes, "Oh, we don't quite have a budget right now, but it looks very interesting. I'd like to discuss it." And I'm on the side, and I work with like 3 other businesses of similar things, and I'm like, within a month, we can unlock like 200 grand worth of opportunities. And I'm just like laughing in my head because like they don't know what they don't know. There's never been something before where you could literally almost like turn a tap or, like flick a switch, and suddenly like opportunities and capabilities that were not possible before suddenly materialize, right? Like, so I completely agree with you, Danilo. Like, until you feel it, it's visceral. Until you feel it, it's not an intellectual thing. Then you're like, then it's like, how do we progress along this vector, essentially, isn't it?
And look, on the money side, this is also to do with lack of education and maybe a weak CFO, because everything you do around innovation, most of it is CapEx. And you can treat CapEx in a way where you can amortize that cost over time. You can treat it as a one-off expense, so it doesn't touch your profitability, doesn't touch your EBITDA. So, the CFO needs to, get off his seat and start doing some work as well. And the second thing is the UK government and a lot of EU countries, like Ireland especially, they pay for a lot of innovation grants for you to do this work for free. Yeah, I used to have the second largest innovation grant check every year. It was about 2.7 million euros. I won't say for which company because, this stuff is not widely talked about. But the government pays for you to solve problems in innovative ways. As long as you just then teach a bunch of scholars in universities how they can do it as well, so they can help other companies. So there are multiple ways to pay for this type of work, and it can be treated in very special ways where it doesn't touch your profitability. So this thing of we don't have money, we don't have budget, is just people that don't know how to run finance as well.
The impact, right? But also, like they don't realize that it can be that profound. Also, like people have bought automation in the past, they bought some cloud thing, and like the promise has never actually yielded. But like nowadays, like with the kind of stuff that's possible, there's so many ways that can be applied, essentially.
I have really strong opinions about this. Actually, I've been transforming companies for 20 years, but we didn't have this type of AI 20 years ago. So how was I doing it if everybody is so disillusioned by the whole thing? To be honest, it's to do with lazy leadership. And I'm actually talking about this a lot lately. People that want these magical transformations that happen overnight without even mapping out what the hell the company does. It's like, giving somebody a car key in a foreign country and saying, hey, I want you to go to that place over there, and not giving them a map. Leaders have to stop being lazy. They have to get their shit together, and they have to map out what a company does so that they can build and design purposefully what is their to-be state. How is it going to look, 6 to 12 months from now, 2-3 years from now? So whenever I see this, when I join a board or when I'm helping consult for a company, I get very angry with leaders. I say, but first thing, I'm not going to ask you about any technology you have. I really don't give a shit. I want first to know, have you actually mapped out what the company does? And no kidding, 95% plus, they say no.
Do you say to them, because we say you can look at your workflows, your processes that you've got now and automate parts of it. And, you've got humans in the loop now, maybe soon you won't have that. But then we always say, But the real winners, your competition is not the incumbents. It's not the people you meet at your annual events, right? It's the new entrants that are going to be AI first. So you've got to look at your business and almost in a separate pocket almost, or maybe it's part of the same process. What would it look like if we started a game? Because that's your competition.
But that's blue ocean strategy, right? That's just redefining your value curve in terms of what do you reduce, what do you eliminate, what do you expand, what do you go from there, basically. But before you didn't have the capabilities to actually literally do that technologically, and you can do that now, basically, right? So,
Well, actually, I disagree because BPM tools have been around for at least 20 years, right? We had Visio a heck of a long time ago. And then we started evolving from Aries 1 BPM style of mapping to Aries 2. So BPM has been around for a long time. And when I mentioned this very key element that transformation starts with process, a lot of the guys that used to do transformation 20, 15 years ago, they kind of go, oh yeah, they kind of remember all of a sudden, we had this. It was a big thing, Kaizen, Kaiban movements in the year 2000. This is why we started with process. Yeah, exactly. And now you actually have a way of, doing something serious about it after you've mapped out your process. So I have zero tolerance for companies that just have all these excuses, all these barriers. I'm too busy is another one as well. End of the day, the CEO should add to everybody's annual objective that they have to save and improve at least 10% of their department every single year and let people get to work. And very soon they'll realize they have to start mapping out process. They have to then start choosing what the teams should and should not be doing, working together to eliminate duplication of work. And then, the technology piece like automation, AI tools, that comes almost at the end of the cycle. It's not at the beginning. So the problem is, just to finish this point, the problem is people are lazy. They want quick results. You can go and get a couple of automation tools here and there and apply it into some low-hanging fruit, but you're going to hit a glass ceiling very quickly, very quickly. Within a year to 18 months, you're going to hit a glass ceiling. You must redesign what the company does front to back. Start with the department, if it's a very big company, but that must be done. That's the only way to transform. Otherwise, you're just playing a game, putting lipstick on a pig.
And what's your view on, so we talk about, you've got, the off-the-shelf AIs, your co-pilots, whatever it might be, different productivity suites. But once everybody's got that, and also sector-specific AI, so you might have one in law, for example, right, or wealth management. Now, everyone's adopting it. So suddenly everyone's got, Copilot, they've got this application in their wealth management business or whatever it is. And everyone's got it. So it's like spell check. So therefore, it's then about how do you differentiate AI to actually make a difference to the competition who are all going to start looking the same? Because all the SaaS providers now are embedding AI somewhere, but it's not quite the same.
But this is why you're getting even, companies which are E3, E5, E7 Microsoft license holders, they're still complaining about Copilot. So it's again down to two things. They don't know how to use Copilot properly. They don't even know they have Copilot Studio where they can actually configure the stuff. And then, they're applying it to what process, what pain point, because they're too lazy to map it out. So I think the real winners in the next 3 years is going to be the companies that look at the blueprinting of their companies and then start really redesigning the 2B process and then building towards that as they start, working out their transformation roadmap properly. Those are the real winners.
Yeah, you have to look at the customer experience as well, right? So it's looking for the department side of it, but also like what new capabilities could we actually do? How can we personalize that was not possible before, basically, right? So like you're looking at like those two dimensions of it so you can kind of transform. Because we always say with businesses like this, kind of three vectors is driving revenue, increasing service capacity without adding more people, or transforming the experience and essentially personalizing that journey. So completely agree with you. It's like rethinking what's possible and then, acting on that defined future state, basically, so in that regard.
And Danilo, you're saying that we think this as well, that if you stop developing even generative AI, never mind the next version of AI, today, it'll still take 3, 4, 5 years even to really see it out there in the economy in terms of really embedded deeply. So the point is that people kind of almost sit in the hand waiting for the next version. So in terms of where do you think we are, you've got Grok 4, we've got ChatGPT 5 coming out. To some extent, like you're saying, it doesn't really matter, does it? Because it might be profound. But if you haven't even thought about embedding something that's using, the basics today, what's available now, does it really matter?
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. And this is the problem, right? You could have GPT-20. You can have Grok 15. What is the agent going to do in the company? Like we mentioned, this is a really important point. We mentioned startups having an advantage because they can start from scratch. And that's true. But the one thing startups don't have is data on process. The biggest thing that people need to realize is you got to map it out. And then once you've mapped out this to-be process, you got to lock it inside a workflow engine. Because what used to happen in the good old days is you go map out a beautiful process. As soon as the consultant leaves the room, everybody goes back to Excel and doing all the kind of rubbish they were doing before. So you have to lock this good process in a workflow engine. And so that you kind of, you don't lose your investment. But the second reason, and most people don't realize this, you need to have coordination of humans and digital workers so they can actually work with each other. Once one is completing a task, you're completing the other. It's like a teammate. But the third reason, and even less people understand this, is you need an audit trail in order to train your agent what the hell to do. So let's say you do payments in your company, and there are multiple ways that payments can work out. And you have made 100,000 payments in 20 different ways. You have a lot of historical data in your workflow engine of how a human has done it. This is what you need as a training set to feed into your agent so that when you have GPT-20, whatever it is, it can actually work in your company because it actually knows what the hell to do because there is a system for it to work inside of, and it has historical data to train itself on what to do when different scenarios pops up on the workflow engine. So, but you can't go and just magically buy a workflow engine, right? You have to build out the screens, you have to build out the steps, and hey, what happens? You have to know your process. So it all goes back to process in the end of the day. You cannot transform. I was with the CEO of Genpact last week, and we were geeking out transformations. He's done a lot of transformations as well. I've done a bunch. And we were just basically laughing, saying people just don't get it. They need to know their process. They need to lock it in the workflow. And then they deploy automations and AI. Once they have operational intelligence, what the hell people are doing, what are they getting wrong, and they need that training set for the agent. So we just gobsmacked. People still haven't caught on to this. It's just, but it's good for the companies that do catch on. They're gonna absolutely obliterate their competition.
Exactly. It's all the edge cases. It's all the, how you handle it. It's all kind of like the way you do it. It's the stylistic form you communicate it. It's everything, right? Like all of that is required before you can bring any AI to it. Otherwise, it's just the same as like saying, write me a marketing post. Like there's no context in it. There's no nothing in there. It's just it's going to be random basically, right? So I completely agree.
Danilo, is that why you think OpenAI has just launched a consulting business, interestingly?
Exactly. Because you see, people unfortunately, even brilliant people, they lack a lot of imagination. So they lack a lot of imagination. A lot of brilliant people, they're overworked. So they don't have this, brain space to go and look at the blueprinting of the company. Why is it doing what it's doing? So, OpenAI is the first of many, and they took a page off Planeteer's, what they did there as well. But all of the AI companies will start doing this. All the AI companies are starting to sign deals with the big four consultancies because they need people to teach other people how to use AI properly and to embed it properly, like we've been discussing today. So, yeah, it's a shame. It's a bit like it's a bit like preparing a meal for somebody, and then you have to actually feed them in their mouth. But still, until the industry has enough professionals to teach other people how to do this properly. Those that do kind of pull their, get off their seat and actually stop being lazy leaders, they do have a 2-year advantage, I think. So companies who are actually applying it properly in these methods that we've been discussing, they're going to have at least a 2-year head advantage over everybody else, if not more, maybe 3 years even.
And what's your view on robotics? So what's the state of the art there? Because obviously you're seeing the physical beings themselves are becoming more capable. They're now being able to sort of, the Google, for example, be able to understand the built environment and move around it. But it's not quite there yet. But when do you think that what we call the ChatGPT moment of robotics is going to be?
So I remember in GTC 2 years ago, Jensen was talking about humanoids and the fact that he's creating this digital twin of the world so boats can train in. And then when we were in Paris a couple of weeks ago, I saw something like 4 or 5 times the amount of humanoid companies that NVIDIA is working with. So in a 2-year space, 5x the amount of companies, seriously playing in this space. So I think humanoids, by the way, humanoids are already working, right? Like look at Amazon warehouses, 60% of their workers are bots. They're just not humanoid-looking bots, but they're bots. Look at Ocado and their Beehive, right? Where they have incredible amounts of robotics happening there. And by the way, in case people forgot, autonomous vehicles are robots with AI. They're just a car, right? It just doesn't look like a human, but it's a car. So I think a lot of the technology is there. That's still, the market is quite small. It's still a $30 billion market. It's not, we're not talking hundreds of billions. So it will catch up. But, remember, AGI is available in 2 or 3 years from now. By then, a lot more robotics companies will be available, a lot cheaper as well, robotics. So when you start combining AGI with a physical robot that has human type ability to touch things and pick things up and understand the world around them because of the digital twin from NVIDIA, then things will take off, right? It'll be just a question of explosion then.
And why do you think, say you've got AGI, we'll talk about yesterday, you've got AGI, the capability, okay, and that's with an agent. So what happens to the agent then? Do you have it's almost like one agent that can do anything? And then what happens to SaaS and software and that whole sector?
Even though the capability will be there in 2 years, it takes a while. It takes a while for people to get their heads around it, to implement it, for there to be an industry of support systems created around it. Even though GPT came out, almost 3 years ago, OpenAI still hasn't launched their, consultancy business until now. So it takes a while. So even though AGI will be available in 2 or 3 years, people are still going to be actually understanding they need a workflow engine to implement the damn thing. So it just takes time. Some companies will be faster and they're going to absolutely kill it. Their revenue is going to explode. They're going to do really well. But it just takes time. I think what's going to happen a lot is something what I'm calling vertical fusion. So if I'm a tech company, I'm starting to operate in the financial services space. If I'm a consultancy business, I'm going to start going after those legal. I'm going to go after legal tech because now I can build that with AI. So a lot of companies that used to be traditionally in 1 or 2 verticals, they're going to start expanding outside of their vertical because they can quickly build up software and spin up services. So they're going to be busy doing that. They're going to be busy capturing a lot of the revenue and trying to compete in new markets they haven't competed in before because it's cheaper today than it is ever before. And then all of that, while they're also transforming their own companies as well. So it takes time, guys, for things to implement because the world is more complicated than just, implement something into a process. There's politics, there's geopolitics, there's all kinds of things happening, right? So there's the Epstein list coming out that's already been leaked yesterday. That's going to cause havoc. So, there's other things happening in the world. And I have to sometimes police myself because I get very angry why companies don't take this opportunity, go faster, invest more. But then I get reminded, I've matured a lot in the last year where I kind of look, there's other things happening in the world.
Well, just on that though, I find that frustrating as well. Aalok does as well, because the power of it. You know the film, the Big Short, and they're looking down the street, everyone's wandering around, and they kind of know that everyone's mortgage is about to implode, but nobody knows yet. And it's like when you're in the AI bubble, it's like you're looking out thinking, don't all people understand
all these sectors,
what is possible now? Yeah. And where it's going. And they're kind of walking around and sort of almost like sleepwalking. You think there's an enormous, like you just said there, Danilo, enormous opportunity in business to completely transform what you do and get ahead of the game. Why wouldn't you go all out after it?
Again, I think it's going to change quickly once the leadership changes, once there's a bit of education at the top. They're going to start seeing their competitor. As soon as you see your competitor do it, that's a big ignition, right? It's like, going a day with your wife and then there's a really, hot guy next to you and you're like, I got to go to the gym. So it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be the same thing. Some industries will go faster. It's just a question. Nobody moves at the same pace. It's the same with people in personal life, right? And it's the same in business.
The thing is, by the time you see that, they've already had 6-7 months of work and implementation behind the scenes, right? And then their iterative rate of improvement will just expand, right? Where you're trying to figure it out. But listen, it comes down to vision and leadership, right? And everybody's different, right? Everyone's internal rate of change is different to the external rate of change in the world. And some people like new things, some people don't. But the thing is, the world is now moving at an ever-increasing rapid pace. And I think the point is, it's going to either act on you or you're going to act on it. And you just got to decide, basically, isn't it, right?
Yeah, that's really, really interesting, Danilo. So tell us, what do you focus on? Tell us about your podcast.
So the podcast is just a hobby. It's just to meet people because we meet a lot of interesting people in our industry. I'm really focused on the delivery side of things, helping the big four actually deliver on their side because they have great strategy, poor execution. helping the software company deliver and expand and grow. Obviously, the podcast has been a lot of fun. There's some new things coming out this year as well, which I'm pretty excited about. New collaborations and some, I can't say too much yet, but you'll get announcements very soon. My main mission, really, it's been like that for at least a year or two, is just really helping educate people how to implement the stuff properly, how to execute properly, like get the head out of the very nice strategy PowerPoints and actually start doing these things. That's what I've been doing, really intensely the last 2 years. And I'm just going to try to up that as much as I can through all the different channels I have.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Danilo. We'll get you back on in 6 months, hopefully, if we can find some time for you. We do appreciate you joining us.
Let's do it. Yeah. Thanks, guys, as well. And great work with your podcast and great work with your company as well. Implement AI. You guys are doing great events. You're also educating a lot of people. So I know it's hard yards trying to talk to people who maybe not always listening, but they will one day and they will understand.
Well, that was great. So in this sort of last section, what we really want to do is kind of go back to, we've talked about the state of AI. I've had Danilo's view on that as well, which is all very important. But now what? So, and we talk about this a lot in our documentation, our white papers, so now what? So this technology is available, it works, it can create value, but how do you start the journey? And that's the biggest issue we come across is organizations, business leaders talking to us saying, well, where do I start? What do I do? My board, my senior leadership, they don't get it, or they're not interested, or they don't believe it can add value. So how do I prove that in a way in which is affordable? And where can I get, measurable, reliable return on investment and see it almost immediately?
All right. Let me go through what I've been going through with quite a few people. I'm going to call it the 7 habits of highly effective AI.
Okay, there's a book in this.
The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is one of the best books ever. I've been recommending it more and more to people. Actually read the book. Don't get a summary. Don't get an audiobook. Read it. And the reason I've been recommending this book to several people is for different reasons, because to upskill themselves in the age of AI, you need to work on yourself and your capability. But the second thing also, it just gives you the kind of like tools for life. But why am I talking about the highly effective AI? Because if you look at that book, there's 2 parts. There's a diagram where it talks about internal victory and then external victory, basically, right? And if you think about AI, putting AI in your organization, I would look at those 2 dimensions: internal victory first, external victory second. So you ask the question, where do we actually start with AI? I would start with internal victory for the business. So for human, that is your mindset, begin with the end of mind, put first things first, work on yourself, seek first to understand, and before you seek to be understood. So the point in some of those different ones is about working on yourself, your understanding, your mindset and abilities. So with AI, what that is, understanding your customers, understanding your data. So one of the first places we start with, everyone, is an analyst agent. People say, I don't know, I don't think my team will accept AI. Well, how about AI that helps them make more money and also helps them prevent problems and also helps the customers be better? Most people would say, yeah, that sounds like a good thing, basically, right? So an analyst agent is one of the best places to start. It could be email analyst to spot missed opportunities, spot complaints, spot issues, spot cross-sell potentials within the business. Or it could be call analyst, which is one of the most common ones that we do, spotting missed opportunities, people that want to book something or buy something that didn't do that, people that are complaining about something, people who are actually happy that will leave a review for you. You know that they're happy because they've been measured and happy and that kind of stuff like that. So
From that though, so anybody with recorded phone calls can, I'm telling you now, create immediate value with a call. Yeah.
a lot. Some people we've done within a month, there's 227,000 worth of sales opportunities, concrete ones, along with the actual steps they need to talk about with each person about each thing, basically, right? Same for emails and stuff. There's so many places where you could go to your customers and your team members that are working on things and spot what they could buy or cross-sell just based on those different things. So analyst, so internal victory, start with analyst, that kind of stuff like that. That's quite a good one to look at. Second part of it would then be in terms of helping people kind of get more done. So capacity, if you want to think about that, right? So imagine people need to look up information, find different things. So they want to answer somebody, but they want to get the information from a place. Give them the assistance to them. Give them ability with knowledge bases and different things set up where they can ask questions and the information comes to them, or the information could go to a customer very quickly so that they can actually get that technical information in that kind of way, in that straightforward way. So I would say that one of the best places to start is, that internal victory, which is helping your, first detecting things that weren't seen before. And second thing also helping your team basically surface knowledge and answer questions in a much better way with more patience, more empathy, and more personalization, basically, right? And then the other part of it is personalization, right? Which is then the more you can actually analyze different customers, their details, even enriching on their websites or even on their LinkedIn or whatever like this, and finding out more about them. Have they won some awards? Have they got specific needs? Have they got an event coming up? You can then personalize. Have they got like new associates that join that business that don't order from you? Have they got new service lines that they're now recommending, which they not contact you? All that stuff you can then personalize and tailor, like new opportunities to. So I think the first bit is that internal victory. Anything to add on that bit before we go to the next one?
It's the signals, isn't it? We often call them. It's the ability to track organizations and even individuals in organizations. It's like I always think about it like the fighter pilot, where it's tracking 200 different targets, and a human can literally only follow one person. It's the ability to, if that, yeah, effectively, you're right. So it's the ability to track, thousands of these targets all in one time. And if anything happens in one in particular, you can then zero in and focus on it. And then that's how you can create real value. You cannot do that with human resource.
So another business we were talking with, they're basically like, as part of this process, we're going to capture their know-how, because like, for example, they were saying that like across, there were so many emails, so many support tickets where their team have answered questions in specific ways, and all of that keeps getting repeated. And if that senior person leaves, who's going to explain all that stuff? Like the new person ain't going to go through, 3 months or 3 years worth of data and then find out the best things from it. Like that's where, if your AI was already kind of like trained on that or training on that, you have that also, that resource that protected your way of doing things in that way. So let's move to the second part of the 7 habits of high effective AI, basically, which is external victory, right? So external victory is like where you are interfacing with the world, basically, right? So this is where you are then going to be able to like increase your ability to do things. So they talk about in the 7 habits of highly effective people, you talk about like the independent mindset versus the interdependent mindset. So independent is good, you can do your own stuff and you're not dependent on people, but there's a limit to how much you can do. Interdependent is when you can work with teams and other people and you get more done together because your vision and your alignment is there, basically, right? So now let's look at like going into the world. So in that interdependent area, you can actually scale up customer communications, basically, right? So, imagine you have got like, agents on email, someone opts in on the website, someone on live chat, someone on WhatsApp. All these agents can then be like, finding out information about them, be perfectly trained on all the details of your knowledge. They can even be trained on like all the technical support for everything around your product. Let's say you sell vitamins. It could also be sold, you could also have information around diabetes and different things like this just to help nudge and explain stuff. So what that can then do is it can scale up the ability for you to transmit care and almost like, expertise to people in that way, basically, right? So that's can then help you have a big impact. And if you start looking at like, your inactive customer list, or you start looking at all the people that like don't know about your new products and services since you joined, basically, right? Or you look at all the people that like could be a customer for you because you got the ideal thing for them and you've got lookalike customers, like you exactly solve this for these people, but you've not targeted all the lookalike customers. All those things can massively expand your possibility by having agents, deployed on those ones to kind of reach there. So this is all about scaling up communication with the external world, all about kind of reactivation. And we see so many success stories from customer reactivation, from getting insights in prospecting, from, getting the different details and different things. And then you can actually move into this whole dimension of essentially journeys of one. And a journey of one is where you know so much about that person, about everything that they care about, that they could actually target it. So, for example, imagine an agent was trying to sell to you, Piers, right? They would know that, okay, you're into mountain biking, you invest in own a mountain bike company. It would know that you like going into Wales. It would know that you also like camper vans. And if in a conversation it dropped all those things, and also about you like AI, and you also like travel a bit, how much more relevant does that seem to you? Because it seems like that person understands you. And I'm not talking about a superficial way, but I'm saying like if it naturally kind of came about, and like let's say a brochure came to you and it's like, okay, how AI can help your mountain bike company, how AI can help your, like your speaking, how AI can help your implement AI company, or how AI can help you. You also mentor lots of people and you also teach and help, nonprofits and stuff like that, how it can help them that you work with and stuff like that, right?
You often hear this thing about AI could help with hyper personalization, and people's like, what are you talking about?
Brochure of one. The idea is brochure of one, podcast of one, basically, right?
It's a podcast for one, it's a newsletter for one, it's collateral for one. It's even, I mean, I do that in mountain biking. It was product design for one, potentially one day.
Yes, one leg is longer than the other, so it needs to fit like that, basically, isn't it? Right? This is the way the opportunity is. So that was a whistle-stop tour of the 7 Habits Highly Effective AI. All trademarks reserved by
To
Franklin
me,
Covey.
what to me as well, actually. Yeah.
All trademarks reserved by
Where that
Franklin
formula
Covey.
came from. But in all seriousness, like we said, there is not an organization that this state of AI today cannot in some way, and I mean in a way where it creates an ROI over the cost of it, and there's a benefit to that organization. There isn't one. I just don't believe there is one.
Beyond ROI. Like before it was like, oh, will I invest in this? Like, will I invest in this gadget and will it help make my business grow? And many businesses have bought gadgets and anything. Like, honestly, we're well past that stage now. Now the question is like, if you had like, if you look at Taiwan, right? So I'll finish on this, okay? Taiwan, why are most of the fabrication companies like for chips and stuff like that? Why are they in Taiwan? Like TSMC basically makes the chips for everything in the world, and they also make the chips for other chip makers in the world, basically. But why is that? Is it because it's cheaper? No, there's several factors. They have very skilled people with very skilled knowledge. Also, becoming a chip maker is considered a very socially prestigious job to do, and they get the best graduates from everywhere. And they have earthquakes there. Like, I don't know if you've been to like their massive towers. There's like this whole giant ball in the middle of it, which is like an anti-earthquake kind of thing. So if something went down in the factory and everything's in these kind of like the dust-free zones and stuff like this, basically someone will be woken up and they'll go there and they'll fix it and they'll just get back online. So what I'm trying to say is you've got super smart people that are super motivated, that are super, precise and trained to do the thing. And that's why they do that so well. Now take that concept of that kind of worker and you've got PhD level across everything and stick that in your business. And now the question is like, do I want that or do I not want that? If you don't want that, time to sell up, mate. You understand, right? You know what I mean? But if you do want that, you need to get on with it, basically.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think we always say as well in our newsletter that despite what we talked about today, where AI is, it is still the worst it is ever
Yeah,
going to
but the
be.
worst is better than every human ever.
Yeah, and it's so if they start approaching AGI, and the point here is, with this podcast, we want to educate people and get you excited about AI, but we want to we hand on heart, do you mean? I talk about in all of our keynotes, don't we, that there's a ship leaving the harbour, and you're either going to be on it or you're not, and the gap to make that leap from the quayside to the ship, yeah, it is getting wider and wider, and there comes a point where, and you hear this a lot in AI, but I truly do believe this, it will be for those organizations that truly embrace it and implement it, they're going to get ahead and they're going to stay there. So that was a fascinating update. So again, if you like this pod, please do take the time to go and review it on Apple, because it really does
Share it with
help.
a friend. We're trying to get up the charts.
Yeah, I think we're like top 17 in Apple management. We're probably top 15 in business generally. So we want to get into the top 10s.
Just to reach more people. It's just to reach more people, basically, right? Share the message.
So your support does help and the reviews do help. And then go and download our white papers, log into the website, go to our resource center as well. And also, please do have a look at Danilo's podcast as well. He's on YouTube. And that's it for this week. We're back in 2 weeks. May get a holiday, we shall see. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Implement AI podcast. If you're interested in learning more about how we can assist you and your business in leveraging AI for growth and efficiency, visit our website at implementai.io. Don't forget to subscribe to the Implement AI podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or wherever you listen to stay updated on future episodes. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.